Well, hello, ALBW, wherever you are. Hi. I'm Pat Escade. I'm the lead organizer of Ann Lister Birthday Week, also known as ALBW. I'm also a founding member of the Ann Lister Society, and I am the host of ALBW Live. Today, I'm really happy to be bringing on our guest, Janine Van Gessel. We're going to be talking about Sam Lister, another, Ann Lister's younger brother, somebody who she was very definitely emotionally attached to and has his own sad story in the entire story of Ann Lister. So we have a lot to go into there. Before I get started, I owe Lynn Schulz an apology, and I am not too small of a person not to do that. When I set out the social media invite to everybody to come to this, quite frankly, I had my mind on other things. It's been a difficult couple of weeks in the United States since the last election. I am a very political person. I run a political Facebook group that's secret. And I have been deeply involved in the what do we do next part of that. So I whipped off that posting, the social media rollout for this talk, and I did not mention Lynn's very fine work. So if you'd like to get into a ton of detail about Sam Lister, please feel free to go to Pack with Potential and take a look at her article. Now, let's move on. Let's go straight into welcoming. Oh, wait. Stick around at the end of this because we're going to have an update on ALBW 2025. So now I'd like to bring into the studio Janine Van Gessel. Come on in, Janine.
Hey.
Hey, how are you?
Yeah, pretty good considering it's 4 a.m. in Australia.
It's god awful o'clock over there. I'm so sorry, but yeah. So Janine, let's get right to it because we have a lot to cover today. Ann Lister and Ann Walker have inspired many people to research their life and times. What drew you to Sam Lister?
Yeah, good question. So I guess my sister Jennifer, who some of you might know, she was always bouncing around me like Ann Lister, and I started listening and found it interesting, I guess. But so my grandmother was adopted as a child, and we found out only a few years ago who her real mother was. And my aunt's real big on family trees. So we started to do her side of the family, and we found listers in our family. So that was really exciting. Yeah. And obviously I went to Jennifer and I was like, are these related to Ann Lister, And she was like, well, the Halifax listers all died without having children. And I was like, oh, okay. So I got a bit interested and looked into all of that. And Sam's story stood out to me as especially tragic.
Mm-hmm.
And also because I saw he had joined the 84th Regiment in the British Army in 1812. He went to join them. And that was sort of the peak time of the Napoleonic Wars, which I'm really interested in. So I was really curious about that as well. Yeah, so the more I read about him, there wasn't much online at the time.
Right.
And so I started reading letters and journals and things. And the more I read, the more I just wanted to know more.
Yeah.
So, he's not as detailed as Ann Lister. So, you have to really dig deep, I think. Oh, God, there's me in the archives.
But tell people what it is you're looking at here, because this is amazing.
Yeah, that's Sam's hair I'm holding.
Wow.
And in the little picture, I'm holding Sam's journal that he kept in Fermoy when he joined the army.
How did it feel to pick up that lock of Sam Lister's hair? Did you have a reaction to it?
Yeah, it was really, really bizarre to be holding the hair of someone you've read all this stuff about, but they've been gone for over 200 years. So it was surreal. It was really, really strange feeling. And I was really surprised by the color of his hair because, I don't know, I guess I picture him having the same color as Anne, so maybe a bit darker. And it was very light, like very... Jennifer was saying he's a ginger, but it's not ginger.
It looks dishwater blonde to me. But
a really light brown, I guess you'd say.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about the birth order in the Lister family and how that applied to the potential inheritance of the Lister estate. Run through that for us.
Okay, I'm sure lots of people already know this, but
Mhm.
so Anne's father, Jeremy, there was 8 children in his family too, but only 2 had children, including himself and
Mm.
his brother Joseph. But Joseph's children didn't live past infancy,
Wow.
so Jeremy's children were the only ones left. And so, yeah, you can see they had John, who didn't live past infancy. He was born 1789. And then Anne, obviously, was born in 1791. So she is actually the oldest child. And
Right.
then Samuel was born in 1793. And then John, a few years after, then Marion and Jeremy, who also didn't live very long outside of infancy. So, yeah, he died as a baby. So,
Wow.
yeah, Sam was pretty much the oldest boy at that stage. And
Yeah.
yeah, so
So he would have been in line to inherit Shibden Hall, the Shibden
yeah,
estate.
presumably, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So how tell us a little bit about Sam and Anne from what you've read. How close were they? What was their relationship like?
Yeah, well, I think if you read their correspondence, and so Anne's journals are missing a lot from the time Sam was in the army and that,
Mm.
so
Oh,
we don't get that much, but there is a lot of letters between them. And Sam did keep a journal when he went away, but obviously that wasn't really relating to Anne. But they did always keep in touch, even when they were younger. They wrote to each other all the time. And there's some funny stories from when they were little, like the time their mother came in because there was a man in the garret, and they both got up, and Anne took a gun apparently that were loaded under her pillow, and a sword, and
as
they went
one
up to get
does.
this man. Yeah, it's like, what kind of wacky Wild West world were they living in there? But I love that story, and it does sound like they were sharing a room at the time, which
Mm.
they possibly did.
Yeah, not
And
unusual.
yeah, well, I don't think they're exactly that wealthy back then. So,
Right.
and I
Right.
think Sam always talks really highly of Anne. And when he writes to her, he always mentions how she's always doing better than him in studies, and he hasn't caught up to her yet. And like things like that. And Anne likes to give Sam a lot of advice, especially when he went to Fermoy and joined the army. She
Mm.
suggested he keep a journal, which he did, and she suggested he keep reading, studying languages and reading Caesar. And he
Mm.
makes note to always tell her that he's doing those things. And I do think she had hopes that Sam would bring back some sort of honor to the Lister name. um, and I think when he joined the army, obviously you have a chance to go up the ranks and achieve great things,
Yes.
which sadly didn't happen. But she did say to him in a letter in, I think it's February to March 1813, that he was the last remaining hope and stay of an old but lately drooping family. I love that quote.
I love
The
that.
drooping
Late
family.
Griffin.
Yeah, so no
Remember that one.
pressure on Sam or anything to, do great things. But yeah, she really did seem to want him to, take the name and make it good again, I guess. I don't know. Something
Fantastic.
like that.
Hey, you had
And
a couple of pictures of the houses. So um, this is the Lisher home in Halifax, and of
yep,
course Sam and Anne would have been in that home together. And but then
yep.
they moved. Did they move off to Market Waiton, or were they here before then or after that?
Mm, this house was the house where John died, and
Oh,
I'm pretty sure of that.
yeah.
And yeah, I'm pretty sure they went to Market Wheaton after that. I think they were back and forth quite a bit, and that's the house in Market Wheaton.
Hmm.
and it's still there. This is sort of the side back angle of it.
Oh,
So,
interesting. Okay.
we did go and have a look, but we got a bit spooked. Um,
Because
yeah,
what did
so it's
you
called
do?
Skelfree Park Farm now.
Okay.
Oh, we thought we saw someone in the window, and we weren't sure we were meant to be there, so we quickly took off.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess
Anyway,
it's not.
it was. I don't think there was someone there. I think it was my imagination. But
Yeah, it's not
anyway,
like they're
it's
giving guided
interesting.
tours right now. So,
Yeah.
Sam also had a very close relationship with somebody else in Anne's little circle as well. Tell us a little bit about that, Eliza Raine.
Yeah, so Eliza spent a lot of time with the Lister family in Halifax, especially when Anne wasn't there. Um, and you can tell through all these letters that she writes to Anne that the family seemed quite fond of her.
Hmm.
And I think Sam grew on Eliza over time. I don't think she was that, interested in him at first. But it sounds like from her letters to Anne that Marion and Sam were really affectionate towards her, like in around 1811.
Ah,
And
okay.
yeah, and I think she did start to see Sam a bit more like a little brother as time went along, and she often compared him to Anne, which I found interesting. She says that he improves, and I get quite attached to him. He is so like you, and his temper is benevolent and amiable, and he grows your very image daily, and of course a just excuse for having twined around my heart, which he certainly has, dear engaging lad. And I like, so she's saying like he looks a bit like Anne, which I found interesting. And yeah, so she often talked about him pretty, affectionately to Anne, but
Hmm.
she also did seem to have him a bit wrapped around her finger. She does mention she wants some picture of Anne that she's promised Sam, and Eliza says to give it to her instead. And if she just hints to Sam that she wants it, he'll give it to her because she can get him to do anything. So yeah, I think he was a bit,
Yeah. Whipped,
sweet to
as we
her.
say. Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to say it like that.
Yeah.
So, and she also, would have tea with Sam and stuff like that. Even when she moved out of the Lister house, they would have tea together. Mentioned in a few of one of their aunt's letters, Mary's letters. And when Sam went to Ireland, I think Eliza was not having so much to do with the Lister family anymore.
Ah.
And Sam's first letter he sent back to England to Anne went co-Eliza, which she wasn't happy about because she thought people would gossip when they saw that she received a letter from Sam, and she was like, why they would be questioning why is he writing to her.
No.
And
Well.
yeah, she reckoned there was already enough gossip going on about her at the time. And she, after reading that letter, though, she did say that she predicts Sam will be a great man one day. And I think she gained a bit of respect for what he was doing and everything. And she
Good.
still managed to poke fun at him. She didn't like that he was calling Anne my dear, saying it's too Irish and it's not a graceful phrase. And also in the letter, Sam goes on and on and on about abstaining from WW&G, which obviously is very prevalent in a barracks. Like, men are going to go after women and gambling and stuff like that.
Women
And
loving
Eliza,
gambling, is that what that is?
yeah, I think it's, I'm not sure exactly, but it's something to do with wicked women or whiskey women. I'm not
Oh,
100% sure, but
way
I
to go.
think a few people have had different points of view on what that actually means.
Yeah.
But so she found this really funny, and she tells Anne that she doesn't believe him when he's saying that he'll abstain from those things. And she asks if he's going to tell Anne every time he sins. And she says, I believe in spite of Papa's care, he sinned on English ground, and I have no doubt but Irish ground will see the errors along. So she's
Oh,
making fun of him there. Yeah, and I really love that because it's a different insight to how he's presenting himself in a letter. And I mean, people often, try and present a version of themselves to people like just the surface of a letter. So
yeah.
like this is her opinion, and I'm not saying that's true, but yeah, I think she's giving a different side of things.
You get a different point of view through her eyes, which is interesting because she obviously is an interesting character in and of herself. So, tell me a little bit about Sam. Do you, from what you've looked into, do you think he had an interest in being an estate owner? Would he have wanted to take on that responsibility?
So he never exactly mentions, anything about possibly inheriting Shibden Hall
Mhm.
or wanting to be an estate owner, but he does mention getting to know the land at Shibden, going around with his aunt and uncle, but he never specifically says it's for that reason. Like it could just be for a picnic or to know where you're going in Halifax or something. So,
Right.
but I feel like he, I think he would have done it and he would have done a decent job. I sort of feel like he would have been more like Uncle James and just collected the rents and mowed the lawn and, made a garden or something. And I don't
Yeah.
think he would have been building things like Anne, she had these big plans for Shipton, but I don't know if he would have gone the same angle. But so when he joined the army, he really stepped up into the responsibilities, and I feel like he would have stepped up into the responsibility of owning Shibden Hall as well. So
Right. And he would have had a lot of support for doing that, both within his family and within the community, because keeping Shibden going is is the job of the master or mistress of the estate, and it's also important to the family. So I would agree with you. I would think that he probably would have done a decent job. He wouldn't have been Ann Lister, but nobody else was then or
yeah,
now. So, what do you think motivated Sam to join the army? He was 19 years old, right?
yeah, he was very young, but I mean, often they are the recruits even now. But
Yes.
um,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. So, like, again, he never really says why he wanted to join in anything like written down. Though
Hmm.
I guess we could speculate that his father was an influence, as obviously he served and he was seemingly respected for that.
Yes.
And around Halifax, oh God, my voice, there was a lot of army personnel, and I feel like they were very respectable back then. And so also maybe I think the allure of adventure was a factor. Oh, these are the barracks in Fermoy that you're looking at there,
Right.
courtesy of the National Irish Library. And yeah, so this is what they would have looked like pretty much when Sam was there. And
Right.
yeah, he did seem to want to get out of his current situation at home. So I think that could have been a motivating factor. His mother, I don't know if people know much about that, but she was often getting very drunk and causing trouble. And
Yeah.
Anne and Sam do talk about that a lot in their letters, and Eliza also mentions this. And it seemed like everyone was very uncomfortable. And when Sam joins the army, he does say how much happier he is, and that like yeah, he just wishes Anne could be as happy as well. So I feel like there was something going on a bit at home, and I also feel like he had a lot to prove. I'm not
Yes.
sure if this was for himself or for others or for his family, but I mean, there's even a note in the back of his journal from a Miss Caroline Wivel Walker, and she describes Sam as very unfit for the army, as he
Wow.
had little spirit and appeared dull, and that his family encouraged him to join. But I don't think he was lacking in spirit, and I think when he was younger, he may have been a bit quiet, but maybe more of an introvert. but not like Anne. I think Anne's sort of a bit more confident and out there, so maybe I don't know if he's in her shadow a bit, because it's really hard to know. And so yeah,
Well,
I think he did
plus,
just want to prove something.
I don't think you and I have talked about this, but he did have some schooling outside of the home, right? I mean, he went to school.
Yeah, he
And
did.
do you know how far he made it in school by any chance?
No, I think I don't know how the school system exactly went back then, but they seem to just study now and then. And yeah, I don't think he did get tutored sometimes at home too. Even Eliza tutored Marion and Sam sometimes. And
Not, mm,
yeah, no, he seemed actually very good at writing and obviously reading. So I think he did have a decent amount of schooling.
yeah, I was
Yeah.
just the reason I brought it up is that in that time period, um, joining the service, joining the army was actually a pretty well respected way for young men to move into some position in the world. They often paid for those positions. We know that, for example, I mean, with Captain Sutherland, when he joined the service, he paid for his commission. Um, so that it just wasn't unusual. It was part of the whole process. So it was probably a decent choice for him, given that he didn't seem to have any interest in trade or the running of the estate. So why not? Um,
Yeah, it's weird. It's like I don't know if he ever really thought about what he was giving up when he went to the army. I mean, what he could be giving up, because obviously you don't go thinking you're going to die or anything, but there is a very high probability that that can happen.
yes.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's one thing I found interesting about him and very curious. Like, what was he thinking? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, a lot of us ask that question when people join the service, but here we are.
Yeah.
Um, there's good reasons for it, and and a lot of it has to do with economics and status and those kinds of things. So it fits for his time. Let's talk about his experiences in this 84th Regiment. And Jen, if you want to throw that image back up of the Shako, there we go. So this is the plate that would be on his hat, just as you see in this drawing, correct? The Shako plate.
Yeah, well, that's one of them. So there was actually quite a few. So
Mm.
it's hard to say exactly which one would have been his, but I
Hmm.
think this one was an 1812 to 1816, and so yeah, he got there in 1812. So that very possibly could have been the one on his hat.
Got
And
it.
the uniform did change that year, so they went more to a more yeah, the Napoleonic style uniform that year out of an older version. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. Fashion. Um, so what did Anne think about him? Do you have any record of what Anne thought about him joining the service? I meant to ask that earlier and I didn't.
Yeah, so she seemed a bit cautious and mixed about it. So she did congratulate him, but she still had the sort of, I think she says something about the her, she's trying not to consider her own feelings because she knows that he really wanted it. So she doesn't tell him not to go and warn him not to go. So but she's very yeah, like she you can tell she knows that he's in danger, and she is a bit reserved about that. And
Mm.
I think his friends and everyone was a bit the same, and it's kind of funny because we never really get any idea of what his father thought about it either. Like, I don't see a mention anywhere. And you read all these people saying he was pushed in, but his mother was clearly against it. In Eliza Raine's letters, she's always talking about how upset his mother is because of
Mm.
him wanting to join the army, and how it's just made life hell at home because she's miserable. And
Oh, wow.
he did put it off slightly, a few months or something, and everyone was so overjoyed that he wasn't going right away. And So I was like, I'm not sure if like even the aunt or uncle said something to him, but we don't get a really great, description of that from anyone.
He was the last Lister male at home at that time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was. So John died at the age of 15, leaving Sam as the only male. So yeah.
Yeah. So that it does throw kind of a wrench into the works for Rebecca in terms of any kind of men in her household, because Jeremy was Jeremy as it was, and so Rebecca
Yeah.
had some challenges. So, when did the regiment actually? So he joined up in England, obviously. When did the regiment go to Ireland?
So they were already there when Sam joined, and so
Mm.
Sam joined the 84th Regiment of Foot, and so yeah, this is what's left of the barrack walls in Fermoy that you can
Oh
see
wow!
there.
Yeah.
The one on the right is the East Barrack, which was known as the new Old Barrack. So that one was built in 1800s. They started building it. It was finished in 1806. And the one on the left is the New or West Barrack, and that was built in 1809. So both these barracks were there when Sam went, and he never mentions which one he was in. But if you look up the road in the first picture, you can see that they're pretty close to each other.
Yes.
And,
Oh right, there it is.
yeah,
Yeah. Huh.
it's
Interesting.
actually really cool in Fermoy. Wherever you go, you can see where the barracks are because the big lights from the sports fields go around in a square. And
Ah.
so they're both sports fields now, and you can see them anywhere in Fermoy because of those lights. So that's pretty
Interesting.
cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so those were both there already, and the regiment was there already when he went. So
What was his life like there? What did they spend their time doing since they weren't out in a battle someplace? How did that go for him? What do you know about this?
well, from his journal and his letters, he seemed to really enjoy life in the barracks. And, it's hard to know if he's just saying all this in his letters, because obviously it wouldn't be that easy of a life, I don't think. But
Yeah.
he spent a lot of time doing military activities like going on parade or walkouts and on guard. And in his journal, he loves to mention he came to dine in the mess hall that night. Seems to be his big news every day. And yeah, he did also, like in spare time, would walk around Fermoy with other officers and explore because there's a lot of old ruins and things and interesting places.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he does say that he would play rackets or chess and stuff like that. And he does say he would stroll the barrack yard and talk scandal. Or he would just go and read in his room, which I think, he did. He says he did that a lot. And he does mention in his journal that he went to a few Fermoy balls, which one he describes as a miserable attempt, which I really love, and I would love to know more. But he doesn't go into details much on that one. But yeah, so
Takes a
that's
little after his sister in the commentary, I can see, right? She didn't hold back on her opinions. Let's just put it that way, at least
yeah.
in code.
Well, I did when I was in Fermoy, I talked to a lot of people, and they said that when the British soldiers came there, there was no increase in marriages or anything.
Hmm.
And they thought that was kind of strange, but they also said that the army built all their own sort of facilities so they didn't have to share with the town of Fermoy. And
Oh.
yeah, they kept it to themselves. But then apparently an Irish regiment came to stay at the barracks, and the marriages and births all went drastically up. So it might have been a religious thing or something. But
Or a
yeah,
Brit thing. They didn't want to marry those
yeah,
people.
yeah.
It's a
So
long, troubled relationship. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, but he did keep in touch with Anne about what he was doing there, etc. Do you have anything specific in the communication to or from Sam and Anne that you wanted to talk about? Or
Yeah, so like I said, he seems to try to keep this really, proper image to Anne and sound like he's doing really well and doing good, which he might have been, and he probably was. But he tells her, I'm reading Caesar and, doing this and that. And she does ask him to tell her so that any time of day she'll know what he's doing. Like, she's like, you write these big letters, but tell me more about you and what you're doing, and I want to
Yeah.
know exactly what you're doing at each time of the day, kind of thing. And I
Wow.
thought that was really sweet. So he did, actually, that sadly was his last letter, when he replied to that letter to
Oh,
tell her what he was doing. And she does, like I said before, I think she liked to give him advice. And a lot of the advice she would give him was whose kind of company she would think he should keep, because a lot of these officers did seem to be in and around Halifax. And actually, Sam's captain of his company was a Captain Rowe, who was actually really good friends with his mother, Anne and
oh,
Sam's mother. And yeah, so him and his wife, they would go and stay with the Listers, and
oh,
Eliza actually mentions them in her letters, I think in 1812, that they
wow.
were there. And she describes them as horrid creatures, which I found really funny. And she thinks they're taking advantage of Sam's mother, and
Oh,
saying
wow.
they eat and drink and go on shamefully at your house.
Oh,
Like,
wow. Wow.
yeah. So Sam's obviously met Captain Rowe before going to Fermoy, and I think they did. Their mother even escorted them to Liverpool one time when they were going back to Fermoy. And I think also Eliza mentions that Sam told her that Captain Rowe said some what'd she say, most horrid speech of a concerning a young lady. So she
Oh,
thought Sam would like his obscenity. And
oh,
I don't know. Sam probably did at the time, but to Eliza, he didn't like it. So
yeah.
yeah, and she calls him the vilest of mankind. So she didn't have a high opinion of him. And I'm not sure if that's why Anne didn't have a good opinion of him, but she said she could never esteem him as a gentleman, and she's trying to convince Sam to more spend time with a Captain Dale instead. But
Hmm.
I think Sam only really issue with the Rose was the closeness between the captain and his mother. And he was horrified at the thought when she said she would come to Fermoy with them. And I can imagine, as a young man, it would be mortifying thought. Like, oh my God, imagine if your mother showed up at the
Yeah,
barracks.
right.
I would
Just
die.
now that
Yeah,
you,
he says he doesn't know how he would have acted if she came, and that she must have lost her mind or something.
yeah.
But he did spend a lot of time with the Rows. Even in Fermoy, he would often have tea or dinner with Mrs. Rowe and Mrs. Bernard, who was another captain's wife. And I feel like he might have had some adopted mothers there in Fermoy, because he seems to drink tea with them and,
Mm,
walk with them and stuff. And you got to remember, he was 19, like he was still so
yeah,
little. And
yeah. Wow.
yeah, and
You know,
anyways,
it's interesting because the Brits were involved in a war with the United States at that time. In fact, they were busy, like burning down the White House. So his regiment could possibly have wound up over there, here, my place, but they actually wound up going to Australia, didn't they?
yeah, so that was something I reading Sam's journal, I got interested in what happened to the other men he mentioned. And funnily enough, Captain Rowe ended up being the first captain to ever come to Australia as a guard on a convict ship, which he
Oh,
was not happy about, because it was, I think, 6 months at sea.
oh, that's
And
a
then
demotion. Oh, yeah.
yeah, and it was 5 months in New South Wales, and then 6 months back. But
Wow.
actually, so Captain Bernard also ended up coming after him a few years later, or was it like a year later or something? And
Yeah.
Lieutenant Statham, who he also mentions in his journal, also came on those convict ships as a guard. He actually died on one of those.
Wow.
And yeah, and whilst in New South Wales, Captain Rowe was actually on a court of inquiry because they usually have 2 captains and a higher rank. And so he protested this at the end. Oh, so this is it. So
Yeah.
yeah, he protested this court of inquiry at the end, and when he got back to England, he found out that there was a case against him by Lachlan Macquarie, the Major General and Governor of New South Wales, and he was
Oh,
being forced into retirement
wow.
on a half pension. So yeah, he wrote this book to defend his character, and it's got a lot of letters from members of the 84th Regiment kind of supporting his case. And this book's actually held here in the National Library of Australia, so I went to check it out, and it was
Wow.
quite interesting to read and amazing to think that if Sam had made it, that far, he might have ended up in Australia too. I mean, we can speculate and have
Well,
fun with that.
funny
So
little
yeah.
coincidence. Yeah. So now it's time to turn to sadder things. Sam Lister did not come back from Ireland. And as those who watch Gentleman Jack know, that he met his death there. Let's talk a little bit about that. What happened to Sam?
Yeah, so sadly, he went to swim one day in the Blackwater. There's a lot of really clear descriptions of this in the Lister papers written by Uncle James, and there's also bits he's written from a letter from Captain Rowe describing it. So I'll just, I guess, read some of that. So
Okay.
on the afternoon, he went to bathe with some of his brother officers in the River Blackwater, when most unfortunately he almost instantaneously got out of his depth, was taken away by the current, and sank to rise no more.
Yeah.
So it was 5 o'clock before he was got out, and Captain Rowe mentioned that every exertion was made to save him, and that some black men dived in the river for 2 hours, and they found him by accident, and he was in a half erect posture.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's Castle Hyde there on the River Blackwater back in the early 1900s.
Okay.
And yeah, anyway, sorry, I got distracted.
No worries.
So yeah, he was possibly entangled or stuck in a quicksand. And
Oh,
so yeah, they obviously tried to revive him and couldn't. And apparently he mentions that a few days before this, that's Blackwater today,
wow.
he did the same thing, but was lucky enough to get saved by Mr. Inglister, who was a surgeon's mate, and he was cautioned by Captain Lane, like, not to get out of his depth. But
Wow.
Uncle James said there seemed such a fatality about it, so
You know,
nothing stopping him.
I got caught in river current one time and nearly died, and so I know exactly how that works. And
Yeah.
must have been a frightening moment for him to realize he couldn't get back out of it. Tell us about this.
Yes. Oh, yeah. So the Blackwater is really famous for undercurrents and whirlpools, and
Mm,
some say there is like a quicksand on the bottom in places. And
wow.
there's also a lot of floating debris that obviously sometimes sinks to the bottom after a while. And I
Wow.
can really see someone getting entangled and stuck there. And it's really sad Sam ignored that warning and made that mistake. So the river is notorious for drownings. And when I was there, me and my sister, we walked down the Blackwater from town, and we came across this memorial of a young boy who died there only in 2007. And I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure there's been more since then.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can walk all the way down almost to Castle Hyde, and in the cemetery, actually, there is a grave from back in the 1800s too, that was of a mother and child who drowned in the Blackwater. So it
Well,
seems like it's a common thing that happens there.
so
Oh,
we're going to
sorry.
skip a little bit ahead from the outline that you and I have because I
All
need to
right.
make sure we get everything in. But so we we have record that Sam was buried next to Henry Horton or that's made mention of. But you physically went to the site and started looking around for all of this, right? So let's talk a little about that. This is
Yep.
the
So
church.
this is Castle Hyde. This is where Sam was buried,
Wow.
and yeah, so it was mentioned in the list of papers that he was buried beside Henry Horton, Major Henry Horton, Richard Henry Horton,
Okay.
and so, but he wrote Fermoy churchyard, and there actually is no Fermoy churchyard, so that was confusing at first, and yeah, there's actually so many old graves in Fermoy. It's crazy how many there are,
Identical.
and
Yeah.
yeah, so actually I reached out online. Um, this was before I'd finished reading, transcribing Sam's journal, and he actually mentions where Henry Horton's buried in the journal, because he went.
Mm,
I'm not sure he went to the funeral, but he mentions the funeral of Henry Horton, and
okay.
yeah, I reached out to a few people online, and I was lucky enough to get a reply from a man in Fermoy who's a bit of a historian, and he'd just been involved in a restoration project to
Oh,
go around some of the old cemeteries and collect the names of the graves before they're completely gone, because the state of the graves in those places is not great, and
yeah.
lots of reasons, the Irish weather, time, and so obviously he told me there's no Henry Horton. They'd done Old Kilcrumpy Yard and had just been doing Castle Hyde, and he said there's no Henry Horton and there's no Samuel Lister, and
So how
anyways,
did,
he said there's a Richard Harton, and I was like, he was like Richard Henry Harton, and I'm like, no, like go check that again, like.
wow.
I was like, so he came back and he was like, you're right, it's Horton. And
Oh,
I was
wow.
like, yeah. So,
Yeah.
that's it there. The grave
Which
with the
one?
big white bit on it in the middle there.
So the
So,
one with sort of the arrow pointing down of the white part?
yeah, that one.
Yeah,
Good
there you go.
description. So
And
as you
so,
can see, it looks very obviously hard to read, but
yes, yeah,
so he was really grateful to get the proper name, because they were planning to erect a board in the cemetery with all the names of the people buried there so visitors can find the graves, because obviously you can't go and like try and read them all.
right.
It's a bit weird to go around, putting
But there's
paper
no,
over graves.
but what you didn't find next to him, because we can see that there's a stone to the right in that picture. What you didn't find next to him was a stone for Sam. What's that
No,
little stone there?
so it's kind of crazy in there. So the grave on the right side of Henry Horton faces the opposite direction, and that name is clearly readable.
Oh,
And the one on the left side also faces the other direction. That's actually collapsed, and
oh,
it's not completely readable, but there's enough. We got enough off it, or I should say, they got enough off it
yeah,
to know that it's not Sam. But
got it.
anyway, so right beside Henry Horton, there was a lot of broken things. Like, see, this is the state of the graves, some of the graves there,
Yeah,
and this one's broken in half, and this one's just totally like it. You can't make anything out on that thing. It's just completely deteriorated, and
yeah. Looks like it
there
was just
was
meant to be a marker.
yeah, and so apparently a lot of broken stones were carried out and bits and pieces were just dropped around and never picked up. And
Yeah.
I was also told a dump truck came in one time and just dumped rubble all over the ground
Yeah.
in there, like it just used it as a dump site. So
Yeah.
like time and just there's scattered bits everywhere. I don't even know. I've been trying to research this more if Sam had a stone, because he was just an ensign, and that's why I initially went after Henry Horton, because a major will have a more prominent, you'd think, stone than an ensign. But there was lots of bits and pieces, and I was even one thing that was next to Henry Horton. I wanted to dig so badly, trying to stay respectable in a
Yeah.
graveyard, but also that ground is like a thick, wet clay. It's just,
Yeah.
anyways, I couldn't see any writing on this thing, but it was very old and broken, and Yeah, so I sort of, when he said beside, I didn't take that literal, but I sort of thought, oh, I'll go there and it'll just be there, and they've missed it. But yeah, no, I think
Yeah.
they've done a really good job getting these names off these graves, and yeah,
It's a
it's not there.
it's quite a task. I want to say one thing, and then I want to move on to something that we're just about to talk about. I can tell you that in my work on trying to find Anne in the Minster and following through on the Great Renovation of 1878, I can tell you that certain memorials and stones that are, because hers isn't the only one that's missing. There are many that are missing, and there's been a couple have been found in really weird places, like being used as a hearthstone in somebody's house, those kinds of things, because stone is stone and people will use it. Um, so you, but you've been given permission to amend this particular little challenge of Sam not having a marker, yes?
Yeah, so I think it was like the second day there, it just sort of hit me like, man, this is just gone, like I had all this hope to find it, and yeah, I felt so like empty and like failed or something, but it
Mhm.
was just, a sort of moment where you're like, okay, this is over 200 years old. This place has not been looked after. It's looked after now by volunteers only still. And yeah, so I said I hate that they're putting up this board, with Major Horton's name on it and all these other people's names on it, but Sam's not going to be on it because there's nothing to show for him. There's
Yeah.
no sign that he even exists there. And I mean, we all know he's there because it's clear. And I think you mentioned Lynn Scholes earlier. She's found in her article there's actual documents. So a lot of those documents were initially lost in a fire in Dublin. So there is still luckily a record that he is there. But and so they were like, well, I said, I would like to, I wish I could put something here for him, because it's just not fair. Like it feels wrong, And they said, why don't you? And I was like, can I? And they're like, yeah, like, maybe. And so at the time I was a bit, like it's a lot to take in and that. And I sort of thought about it a bit and I was like, yeah, I would like to do that. Like I think he deserves to, be remembered. And
Yes.
I mean, he obviously died very young and he didn't get to achieve all these things that I'm sure he really wanted to achieve. And like it just felt sad that there's like nothing there for him. Yeah.
So this is what we'd like to do. And I'm sort of watching the comments that are coming in down the side here because I'm looking for questions because we're getting ready to move into the Q&A. Patricia Book just posted something about getting behind an effort to put a stone there. And we are going to set up a GoFundMe for this, correct?
Yeah, so I was initially planning to do this myself. And everyone I told about it was like, don't do it yourself. They were like, I want to be a part of this. And, I'm not the kind of person that would ask people for money. I know times are tough and, this is like a over 200-year-old grave,
Yeah.
And but anyway, the more I sort of talk to people about it, I realize that people, they do care. And I mean, especially the Ann Lister people are the people keeping Sam's name alive and
Yes.
keeping him remembered and talking about him, making articles about him. And, like he's not forgotten. So, yeah, it would be maybe more special to have something from all of those people.
Yeah. And I have to say that not only because of my role and work in ALBW, but because of my role and work in the Ann Lister Society, I see this as yet another way to grow. That growing Listerverse that's going out there that people now know. Like we have all of our members that go out on walks all over the world. In terms of places where Anne's been before and that kind of thing. Placing a stone in Fermoy that honors his brother with even a possible mention of beloved older brother of, or beloved younger brother of Anne Lister, now makes that yet another marker that we can find, that we can place the Lister family and Anne's interests in other places. So I think I think it would be a really, really wonderful thing.
Yeah, well, the people of Fermoy were overly interested to hear about Anne Lister because they didn't know there was any connection there with their
Wow.
town, and lots of them hadn't heard about her. But the more we talked about her, the more excited they got and very interested in it. And
That's
like, there's
exciting.
so much. Yeah, there's so much in Fermoy that you can still see relating to Sam. Like, obviously the old barracks and the Blackwater and
Yeah.
Castle Hyde, and
Yeah.
there's the where the mail coach arrived is still there, and Sam came in on the mail coach. Like, there's just, I mean, I know like some people may not find Sam that interesting, but I feel like it's actually a beautiful town and there's a lot of history there. And I feel like it
Yeah.
would be nice to add him to that history, like cement him there. And I obviously wanted to choose also a memorial that will last through the ages, because I don't want to risk, it just deteriorating and dying again. So
Yeah, we
yeah.
want to get the right material and
Yeah, it's just
all of that coming
insane.
up. Janine, what I'd like to do is I'd like to just see if anybody has any questions, any comments. I'm just over here kind of scrolling through, and Sam Lister footstepping coming up. Yannicka, I'm not really sure what you mean about that. Does anybody know? Footstep? I guess it's following in the footsteps. So, okay. We don't have a bunch of questions. You've done a great job. Let's see. Jill wants to know, does anybody know if Anne Lister visited his grave? Great
Yeah, so
question.
no, Anne never seemed to go there, which really surprises me. And I'm not sure. I don't think any of the family, it's ever mentioned if any of the family ever went there.
Mm,
And I mean, there is a lot of like the diaries, like I said, are missing. Anne's diaries are missing from the time Sam died. So it would have been great to see her input in that, because even like little things like her input on later in the journals later is interesting, because you hear bits from that time that you didn't hear because they're not there in the journal. Like, apparently the father, she's having a talk with Tib one night, how the father told their mother that Sam died by telling her that her plague was gone and that he won't plague her anymore. And like, that's really shocking. It's like, why would he say it like that? That's how he broke the news her son had died. And
wow. Wow.
and then also there's things like, she mentions so many, things like when she ran into a guy, Mr. Duffin runs into a guy that was right there when Sam drowned, and she talks about what he told Mr. Duffin and gets really upset. That was Mr. Slyfield. And
Wow.
like, I think we only get like little look backs. We don't get all the info. So I really do think that none of them actually went there, which is really sad.
Are you planning on doing any more research yourself, Janine? This still seems to be something that really calls to you.
Yeah, I feel like I just, go off on all these side things. Like, I suddenly got all obviously interested in Captain Rowe and that story.
It's
And I
good
think the
though.
Australian connection really,
Yeah.
and I had convict relatives come here. My pop's side came here on a convict ship. So
Mm, there
that's,
you go.
to me, that was super interesting. And I've become really interested in the 84th Regiment and looking at a lot of those people. But I
Mm,
am also still trying to find a lot of things about Sam. And like, for example, the letters that were sent home from the army, it was Captain Lloyd, I think it was, trying to remember, wrote the initial letter to tell them of Sam's death, but none of Jeremy Lister's later life letters seem to be in the archives, and I'm not sure where they would be. So I'm trying to look into things like that. I thought they might go into more detail about where exactly Sam was buried, or if he had a headstone or
yeah.
things like that. But like anything relating to any of that, I'm interested. So
I've got a couple of questions left. What's the name of the castle?
Oh, it's Castle Hyde. It used to be a castle, but now it's a mansion,
Okay.
and it's on the Blackwater, and it's actually now owned by Michael Flatley, the Lord of the
Oh,
Dance.
oh
You
my
know that
God.
real Irish dancing? And
Oh, yeah.
yeah, so actually he's not in there. There was a big drama. They did some like in the like when they were fixing it up, used carcinogenic paint, and his family can't live in there, and there was a big court case. So no one's actually living in Castle Hyde at the moment. But the churchyard adjoins Castle Hyde and was built for the Hyde family. And
Okay.
funnily enough, there are not many Hydes buried in there. So I'm not sure yet.
So Kay Pollock also wants to know, did the listers pay towards the original gravestone?
No, Sam was buried before I think they even knew that he was dead. But I I've never heard of anyone paying for a stone or anything, so I'm sorry I couldn't really, there's no documentation of anyone paying for a stone or
Yeah.
anything. But
Generally
it's clear that
speaking,
Henry Horton's stone was paid for by his family
yeah,
because it's very elaborate for the time
yeah.
and everything. Yeah.
Generally speaking, in the military, there will be a marker for a grave. In our world, it's more like the markers you see at Arlington and also at the American cemeteries that are spread all over Europe. But they're usually small and pretty specific about birth and death. And this would give us the opportunity to give it a little bit more life than just here's this body, right? So
Yeah.
I really want to thank you, Janine. You've really, it was so interesting for me to talk to you because we always do an interview prior to coming on board here. And you've just done really great work, and I hope you keep it up. So to the audience, because I'm going to have to put you off screen in a minute here, Janine, because we're going to talk about ALBW 25 really briefly. But to the audience, we will get a GoFundMe up sometime in the next 24 hours. Would be great if we can donate a little money to it and get poor Sam finally marked in the way that he should be. But thank you so
Yeah.
much, Janine. Thank
Oh, can I
you.
quickly just say a thank you
Yes,
to some
sure.
people? To
Go.
the West Yorkshire Archive Service, of course, for all their amazing work and help with everything. My sister Jennifer for going to the archives on my behalf many times. David Glover for his tours. Anne Chomer and Janine Sheehan for helping me with transcriptions. And Lynn Scholes for her amazing article on the Pact with Potential website. And there is also a really cool map of Sam's travels from Halifax to Fermoy. He took a really interesting route and everything. And I'm sorry, I forget the name of the person, but check those out on that website. And also Kieran Jordan of Fermoy, who helped me so much with all of this. And the work that they're doing is just amazing to restore all these names from all these graves, because I feel like it's amazing that they're trying to restore their history and keep it intact, because Australia just gets rid of everything. Like we have nothing left of
Yeah.
our colonial period pretty much. And so, yeah, they're doing great work there. So big thanks to those people.
Yeah.
And thanks for having me, Pat.
And big thanks to you, Janine. So thank you. And we'll talk in a minute. So, Sam Lister, really great. Hoping we can all throw in a couple of pounds here and there and get him marked. As I promised you, I wanted to do a brief update on ALBW 25. I was hoping to have a little bit more to tell you about what's going on over on the Ann Lister Festival side, which Rachel Lappin is putting together. What I can tell you is that they are working on their events, and it appears that it's going to be probably late December, early January before they launch what it is they will be offering to you for your trip to Halifax. In the meantime, what I can tell you about ALBW is that our number one event and our only big event this year is going to be a birthday bash, which is actually going to be held on Ann Lister's birthday, which is Thursday, the 3rd of April. So we're lucky enough to get that close to a weekend. It's going to be at the Arches, but it's not just going to be a dance. It's going to be a dinner. So dress up, come on in, have a great time, eat some food, dance, have a great time with one another. Because the thing about ALBW is that it never has been about the events. It's about us gathering together in that one very special place, that place that was so special to Ann Lister, her hometown of Halifax, to celebrate Ann, and most of all, to celebrate us. So, really looking forward to seeing you there in April. I am also thinking about putting together as a separate event, thinking about maybe doing a 1.5 to 2 hour workshop. If anybody's interested, to come in and talk about what's going on in the world today. This is, it's interesting to me, or it's important to me following the election here in the United States. I know there are many people who are concerned about what we may be facing coming up, especially for our community. So if anybody feels like that might be an interesting thing to do, I'll post something about it in ALBW chat, but I'd like to get a feel for whether or not people would be interested, and we'll find a place to do that. And of course, we also have the Ann Lister Society, which is once again revving up to be amazing. And once again, Lori Shannon is going through a ton of papers that have been set in for consideration for the event. So very excited about all of that. So for the time being, I want to say thanks so much for tuning in, and I will see you in Halifax.